India. Now, in the last 1 month, the whole cryptocurrency industry in India has been thrown for a tailwind because the government says it plans to introduce legislation which will define a state cryptocurrency as opposed to private cryptocurrency. The rumors and the speculation are that the government will be introducing its own central bank digital currency, and hopefully, after that, private firms and private blockchain and crypto firms will see regulation come down from the RBI, from SEBI, or any other regulatory authority. So we have Neeraj with us from CoinDCX. Neeraj heads the product and development operations at the cryptocurrency exchange. Hi, Neeraj. Thanks a lot for joining Media Nama. What has been what has it been like for the last 1 month, ever since the government put out that short little statement in its Lok Sabha bulletin?
Yeah, Advait. Yeah, that's so last 30 days have been it's a mix. It's a mix, right? We have experienced a very heavy market growth because of the global cryptocurrency market. We have seen users flocking to the platform, huge activities in buying and selling, right? The scale of the platform growing every day. While on the other hand, we are also we have also been in touch with the regulators, understanding and trying to make an impact on the positive side for the cryptocurrency regulations in India, right? While on the other hand, of course, we have also been focused on educating the people, because one of the things that has happened is a very little information about the bill has come out, right? So there are a lot of speculations in the market, like what does private cryptocurrencies mean, and what is the extent of ban, if a ban is being planned. How will the discussions in the parliament go, because bill has not been tabled. So there are a lot of speculations in the market, right? So our main objective has been to calm the masses, and also at the same time allow them to invest in this asset class.
Has there been a lot of panic selling, or at least clients kind of messaging you all saying that what do we do? Is that sort of rate of client complaints or feedback coming into the platform increased over the last month?
So surprisingly not. I mean, when in 2017 a similar thing happened, there was a lot of panic selling that we observed in 2017. But this time it's completely different. We have not. So once, of course, right when the day the news came out for the banning bill, only on that day and the subsequent day there was some kind of panic selling. But post that, we have seen that there is no panic selling. In fact, there is a lot of buying pressure from people because of the global prices are rising. So instead of selling, people are just buying and getting into it. So that's very surprising, and it's also good for the industry.
So I know that you all had done a survey a few months ago, and you all had put that out saying some interesting trends showing that a lot of IT employees and BFSI employees actually end up buying cryptocurrencies and act. And for me, the most interesting point was that demographic wise, um, we tend to assume that crypto investors are younger, but actually your survey showed that it's pretty split between the three age groups, middle age, old. Um, so, is there a certain change in terms of who's coming into the platform, who's exiting, um, crypto investments on your platform?
Yes, yes, yes. So that's a good question, and so we conducted this survey to understand the Indian crypto market better, right? And we also shared the insight with the public. So of course, initially, a few months ago, more like people from, as we mentioned, in BFSI and IT industry, were investing in the crypto assets. But there has been a shift in the demography. Today, since Bitcoin is being considered as an asset class, just like gold, right? So we are seeing more and more general mass, general people, general audience who are not necessarily from BFSI and IT domain. They are able to invest, right, in crypto. They are understanding, because so awareness is also growing now. Everybody understands what is Bitcoin, because it has been covered in the news. It's coming into the mainstream media, so people have a better idea of what is Bitcoin and what is cryptocurrency. Now, like we have been seeing that Of course, we keep on talking to our customers on a regular basis. So we have been understanding that a normal household person is also investing in Bitcoin, via CoinDCX Go app, which is very simple to use.
So you'd say the Indian investor is not scared about what's going to happen if the government goes for an all-out ban or gives a window of time. Our understanding is that they'll give some 3 months to 6 months to square hold
Yes,
it.
yes, yes. So Indian investors are scared to an extent, of course, because in case of ban, when it happens, people don't understand. People don't know how. Like a lot of people who have contacted us, they ask the question, what happens if the ban comes, right? So we have been reassuring people that CoinDCX would be there and would be available, to do the market making, to do for matching buyers and sellers, so that if someone wants to buy, someone wants to sell, that activity can continue. But of course, people are a little wary because the clarity is missing, right? That is the main reason. But of course, but the market is presenting so many opportunities. The growth is severe with institutions, global institutions coming into picture. They are buying Bitcoin, like Tesla bought Bitcoin. So that is presenting opportunities, and that is the reason people are, even despite having this panic, despite having this fear, they are investing in Bitcoin.
So as an exchange, how how do you envision your sort of trajectory over this 1 year, right? Like let's assume you bring in legislation in April. By the time legislation passes, it may pass within weeks, it may pass within a few months after some deliberations. But do you think that there'll be a massive short-term impact, negative impact on your business, that you will have to cash out a lot of clients first over a 3 to 6 month period? Do you think that such a situation will happen? Are you preparing for such a situation?
So, frankly speaking, Advait, what we expect, internally, what we expect is that the industry has grown too much in the sense that the numbers say, 75 lakh, roughly 7 to 8 million people have invested in Bitcoin. So this data comes from the exchanges, registrations, and accounts. So and a lot of money in the tune of billions of dollars have been invested in the industry. So the market size has already grown to roughly 20% in terms of number of users, 20% of the stock market. So we believe that it's not easy to just ban it and put a blanket ban, right? And we have been discussing with on this, with various stakeholders. So we expect that, of course, a blanket ban cannot be put in place. In fact, whenever the bill is tabled in the parliament, we expect some kind of productive and constructive discussions, and how to we expect that there would be some kind of industry participation, and only then the decisions will be made, right? So that is what we expect, and very strongly. So as such, we don't expect a blanket ban because of these factors, right? For example, recently the bill, Mr. SC Garg have himself said that it can be regulated as an asset class. So that's a big, huge plus, right? The former Reserve Bank, uh, official have also declared, have also touched upon the similar definition of Bitcoin.
So it could be that the
So
government will say private cryptocurrencies are banned, but private crypto assets are allowed. I mean,
right,
that could be the
right. So there is a
distinction.
confusion.
Yeah.
Right, right. So there is a confusion that cryptocurrency is a currency, but so that's the confusion, right? That's very ironic. But it's actually an asset. It's actually an asset, so it can be easily regulated as an asset. That's not a very difficult job and difficult task. So it has been done, implemented in various other jurisdictions and countries, right? So it can. The definition needs to be changed. Cryptocurrencies cannot be and should not be used for payments and currencies and settlements. So the industry is also okay with it. The investors are okay with it. So the concern of the government is actually not a concern in the reality. In fact, government can very constructively regulate it as an asset class, and that is the narrative which is going on in the market, and that is what all the officials, that I just mentioned, have been talking about.
So just in terms of regulations, we've seen different models evolve, right? The US does whenever someone's investing in a crypto asset, they'll have to, or if anyone's providing a platform for crypto asset investment, then you have to get registered under the SEC. Otherwise,
Mhm.
if you're just investing as an investor, I don't need to register anywhere. I have to just go to an regulated exchange. In
Mhm.
Singapore and Japan, it's the monetary authority that decides virtual currency or virtual asset regulations. In
Mhm.
India, it's usually going to be it's likely that the RBI will take that route.
Right.
So, any idea on what the model of regulations should be followed in India, given that we have UPI, we have a banking system that is increasingly becoming digitized. So, any ideas on regulations for India specific?
Yes. So, of course, now that we say that it has to be regulated as an asset class for investment purposes, right? So just take for example Japan. Japan has a similar kind of a structure where it's being considered as an asset class rather than a payment settlement system. Uh, so of course RBI just like Japan, RBI has to come into the picture. Now, why? Because it can also be used as a currency and settlement system. So to prevent that from happening, right? If we don't want that to happen, then the controller of the money has to step in and create some kind of rules that this cannot be cryptocurrencies should not be used as currencies. So of course RBI comes into picture. Uh, RBI also comes into picture because exchanges at some level, they are like wallet holders. We need to create wallets for the users, right? And that is again being controlled by RBI. A lot of interdependencies from the banks, on the banks are there because a lot of transactions, happen via the banks for deposits and withdrawals. So RBI has to be there to, make rules around these. Uh, yeah. So and then of course a very small body can be opened up, which can then regulate the specifics of the asset class. For example, where you can withdraw, how you can where from one exchange to another exchange, or from India to any foreign exchange, if that is allowed or not. All that can be framed around with a very small body, a separate body, right? So that's not going to be very much complicated.
So after the March 2020 order by the Supreme Court, which overturned the RBI's circular, essentially it's been sort of like a free market, right?
Hmm.
Cryptocurrency exchanges can set up. You can set up your business. You can accept fiat currency. Payment gateways have opened up to the industry. Banking channels are also open. So, kind of walk us through how you built those chains, because prior to that, a lot of it was blocked. So you did P2P.
Hmm.
Um, are you now completely onto a payment gateway kind of model, or do you still rely on P2P?
Yeah. In terms of as an exchange, right? As I mentioned, we have to build some good solutions for INR deposits and withdrawals. Essentially, uh, markets are very volatile. People want their deposits to be, completed within a few seconds because the prices change very very quickly. So it's important that we build very fast and robust solutions there, right? So even though it was banking relationships were banned before March 2020, but we nevertheless had integrated a couple of solutions earlier. No, we never started them, but then the case was going on in the Supreme Court, and we had a part into that. 26 was also one of the supporters of that, and we were following the case very very closely. And of course, we were confident that this can be overturned, right? So with that hope, we always had solutions. That's why right when the ban was lifted, on the same day we had INR deposits and withdrawals open. So that was very exciting at that time. So yes, but of course, over the period of time, now we have integrated instant. So initially, it was like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes for the deposits to reflect, etc. But as of today, we have integrated with various payment partners, intermediary partners, to provide instant deposit and instant withdrawal services to the users, subject to the banking infrastructure.
So, just in terms of how people are putting in money, just wanted to understand: are they using UPI to deposit money? Are they using UPI to withdraw, or is it credit cards, debit cards, NEFT, IMPS?
So I mean.
So
Credit
what is
card.
the average? What is the average deposit? That will tell me how much they're spending. What is the average deposit when someone opens a fresh account on Coinbase?
So that number I might not be able to reveal, but I will tell you some good stats here. So of course, as you mentioned, UPI forms one of the major, most important gateways for investment. Only because UPI is very convenient for
Yes.
users. It's very convenient, right? Credit cards and debit cards, on the other hand, incur cost in the range of 1 to 2%. So that's not very favorable. Uh, 1 लाख रुपए में 2,000 रुपए कट जाता है. So it's not very favorable. And then IMPS is also very useful. It's also it's free of cost, right? So IMPS is useful, but so it goes like that. Whenever somebody wants to invest a little higher amount, more than 50,000, they typically go via the IMPS route, IMPS and RTGS route. While for the smaller transactions, UPI is being typically used. That's how it is being done. Uh, Now, average investment size, we have seen investment size of 5 crore. We have seen investment size of 100 rupees. So it's really that wide. It's really up to the appetite, up to the risk appetite, and so average would be difficult to say. Yeah.
So the reason I'm asking is because uh, technically this is all traceable. It's traceable from your end. It's traceable from the regulator's end. That where the money is flowing, how the money is flowing into the exchange.
Yes.
So one proposal that I've been hearing is that uh, you know, crypto exchanges might be asked to buy the digital currencies. So instead of accepting INR, you will actually accept INR and give the person digital currencies, and then they will use the digital currency to open a wallet, and then the wallet then is used to buy cryptos. Is this a model that's pursued elsewhere in the world? Do you think this is a uniquely Indian model that the government may attempt? Again, we don't know what the model that we are following, but
Uh,
basically putting a digital currency in between crypto and fiat currency.
Stable coin. Are you talking
Yeah,
about?
yeah, essentially a stable coin.
That is fine. I mean, that is the best model. It's being followed everywhere. This is in fact the model, how cryptocurrency markets are. So if you see, USD Tether and USDC are the stable coins. BUSD, these are the top stable coins. So most of the crypto trading volume happen, more than 90% of the volume happen in these markets, right? And USD to USD Tether, USD to stable coin, they are other markets where typically it's onboarding and offboarding, on ramp and off ramp. Once a person buys into crypto, then you don't need to get out of it again and again. You can just trade there itself. So this is a very convenient model. Of course, for India to bring it up, we'll have to release the CBDC, the central bank digital currency, which acts as a intermediary layer. Of course, that needs to be done. But this is actually a good idea, and eventually we expect this is how it will be. Eventually.
Do you think, this is the question I want to ask most crypto entrepreneurs? Is a CBDC required in India? We are far ahead in terms of digital payments than many Western countries, right? Just in terms of mobile payment transactions, the volumes that we are showing, no other country kind of shows. So do we require it? Do you think CBDC should be used for something more important than consumer payments, retail payments?
I believe it's certainly required. I mean, there is nothing like required because when UPI जब नहीं था तब भी वो nobody knew if it's required, right? It's a matter of mindset. What kind of mindset you have. So other countries like US, and say China, they have an experimental mindset, right? Where if something is promising, then of course you experiment with it and you see if it's going to be very very useful too, right? I think with that mindset, India should enter into CBDC. India RBI should try releasing a CBDC and see at a practical level what are the uses, how useful it's going to be. There are promises like RBI can, like with CBDC as a programmable money, you can eliminate the use of banks altogether, right? You don't need bank because There is the structure goes. There is RBI, and then there are of course say 20 banks, and via these banks, RBI controls the money supply, the inflation, etc. Right. So this is a very costly layer in between. Right. The banking layer is very costly layer. And it's also very non-transparent. You don't know what is happening inside a bank. You never know how money is flowing inside a bank. So CBDC has the potential to eliminate all this and make it fully transparent for the public, right? In the long run. So it's an experiment worth doing. Why not?
So I find it kind of funny that corporations and regulators over the last 2-3 years have just accepted cryptocurrency. This is, oh, we'll also innovate on this. When 10 years ago they were very anti cryptocurrencies. So you see this with the CBDC debate, right? Most people said you don't need a digital currency, but now I think 60 out of the top 90 central banks are already one way or the other working on it. So just in terms of how cryptocurrencies have evolved, just in this 3 years, it's evolved to a very mainstream instrument. Even 3 years ago, people were still wary about it.
Mm.
I think in 2016 there was one large crash, and that was the last time that it was really a mainstream topic. Till this, I think, COVID pandemic onwards. So just in terms of what are your thoughts in terms of corporations now buying into it, institutions now doing it? Clearly, there is a move to using a lot more blockchain solutions. At least that's going to become a lot of these projects are going to be scaled, and now the government's also looking at blockchain. So, what do you think about the evolution of cryptocurrencies as they become more mainstream than ever before? And do you think that this mainstreamization of cryptos are going to have some unintended consequences? Like anonymity is no more a thing in cryptocurrencies, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Um, so I mean, cryptocurrencies. Yes, so a lot of institutions across the globe in 2020, especially after the pandemic hit, right? The world realized that digital currencies, pure form of digital currencies, might be the future. You know, on the other hand, we have seen that the fiat currencies are getting devalued over time, right? We have seen US printing a lot of money, and the treasury printing a lot of money. And overall, so there have been some surveys as well, right? People's confidence on the governments and on the central banks have been on a declining trend. That's just a fact in the survey. So then so for an institution from a corporate point of view, when you have a few $1 billion rupee, few $1 billion in your bank, on your account, on your balance sheet, so you would ideally want to diversify. Uh, its diversification is one of the most safest and very well understood strategy for money management. So that is where the cryptocurrency fits today for corporates, right? So if you invest $1.5 billion, just like Tesla, into cryptocurrencies, you are investing because you believe that down the line the value of this money invested would increase, right? Compared to if you keep it just keep it in US dollar, right? So essentially, that is the narrative that the value of cryptocurrencies will surpass the hard cash, the US dollar, right? The US dollar is devaluing, and the cryptocurrencies are increasing in the value, right? So that is the narrative. That's why future is very very promising. That is the reason future is very promising, and we will see a lot of institutions jumping in further, right? Because these mainstream corporates have already invested, right? So across the globe, a lot of institutions are already evaluating in for investing, right? We have already seen a lot of corporates wanting to buy into Bitcoin from India in last 2 months. So we have seen a certain inflow there, right? It was absent before 2 months. It was low before 2 months, and
You're saying listed corporations in India are looking to.
listed corporations, of course, might have regulatory concerns, right? So then that's why we need regulatory clarity.
Yeah.
That's why we need regulatory clarity.
No, I'm thinking like in a world of savings account rate is 4%, 6%.
Mm-hmm.
Bonds will give you 7% maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Mutual fund may say one third goes to tax.
Yes.
So, what are so right now, just on this taxation issue, I think CBDT said, according to reports, CBDT will put out a circular now soon that they will have you will have to declare your crypto holdings. How are you advising your clients about taxation? And do you have to pay GST today, or do you pay any taxation on your uh, trading fees, commissions that you charge?
Yes, we do. And for the clients, so we see, since there is no clarity, we typically advise for capital gains tax to the clients who are investors. Now, who are traders, there is another taxation rule. So essentially, we advise them how they would have been taxed in the regular traditional markets. Very similar to that. Capital gains for long-term holdings and investment, and then there is securities taxation separately built for traders, who trade on a regular basis. So that is how I advise, and we advise to pay in the maximum slab.
And who do you have to pay to? Who accepts
We
the tax?
we pay as a corporate.
Okay, so you
Yeah,
pay that tax.
yeah, as a corporate.
There's
So
no specific declaration you all need to maintain as of yet.
yes, yes, yes. But frankly speaking, it's very cumbersome as of today because there is no clarity. What's considered as profit, what's considered as cost, etc. There's no clarity. So of course, we have to make our own assumptions and we have to self-regulate. So we expect some clarity from the government on that front.
So just regarding the self-regulation, so the IMAI has come up with a blockchain and crypto asset committee, and they've come out with a code of conduct. Now, one of the things in the code of conduct is said, obviously you have to keep KYC, you have to store all transaction and customer information for about 7 years for whatever purpose. And of course, they've asked for you to maintain records of all CoinDCX transactions with other exchanges and about your customers. So, name of customer, bank account details, how much crypto they hold. So, in terms of KYC, AML, how robust is your process? Do you think that uh, most crypto firms, at least the top 10, if they all follow the same standards that, let's say, a bank or a fintech player would in terms of payments, in terms of fintech lending, for instance?
Yeah, yeah. So that's the good question. So yeah, in terms of KYC, we have implemented a few uh, robust checks on the user profiles, right? So more importantly, like we have designed a system which is also which goes well with the COVID situation, right? It's difficult to do the physical check. Uh, so so that's why we have introduced a new feature called liveliness check, where we with the help of our technical partners, we match the user's selfie, a live selfie with the Aadhaar card or identity card's photo, right? And that is how we ensure that uh, the credentials being provided are legitimate, right? Of course, we go we collect Aadhaar card, PAN card, etc. The source of income, if you go beyond a certain volume, and then our customer team also talks to the phone numbers, to verify the authenticity of the person. So all those checks are in place. We also check bank accounts by dropping 1 rupee, to the account by penny drop mechanism, and we so that's how we do bank account verification, right? And then of course, post that, we put a lot of limits on the limits to ensure that users are able to transact, but at the same time the accounts are not being misused. The withdrawal limits on withdrawals, daily limits on withdrawals, then annual limits on withdrawals, right? So all these checks are there in place to ensure AML, to be compliant on the AML side. uh, while on the other hand, we also do trade monitoring to understand, the trading behavior, if there is any illicit trading behavior, self-matching, market manipulation, etc. So we also do trade analysis, trade data analysis, and of course there are a lot of things on the security side, because that's also one of the objectives, to keep everything secure. As a self-regulated exchange, we keep our funds insured with BitGo. right? So that in case of any mishap, the funds are secure. And we use Onfido for authentication of users, authentication checks of the users. So all these form a part of broader checks and regulations that we have put into the platform to ensure that the users trade freely, but at the same time they are secure from
So
everything.
if regulations do come, it doesn't actually change much for you all, right? Because I think most companies today are using the same set of API providers for KYC or even AML on the side. I think the only concern with crypto is that where it goes from, let's say, an anonymized from a non-anonymized regulated entity to an anonymized area like the dark web, for instance. So
So
have you
we
seen a
that's
lot of
not a,
yeah? Have you
hmm,
seen a lot of
yeah.
activity of that happen in India? Because so according to Chainalysis, India is the ninth most uh, is the ninth largest country in the world with darknet Bitcoin trading or Bitcoin activity taking place on the dark web. So is that so? How do you kind of make sure that CoinDCX doesn't interact with those sort of dark spaces where you also can't see what's happening, where the money is going?
So we have also integrated with a chain analysis tool, right, to ensure that the funds do not come in as well as go out to a darknet address. That is one. And secondly, in terms of how we can ensure it, with 100% guarantee, is to come like we also like Sumit and I have discussed a couple of times that we can simply disallow the withdrawals, because since it's an asset class, you don't need to withdraw it. You invest and uh, just sell it off. I mean, that could be a very simple solution to this problem. Of course, this can be discussed during if discussions happen during the parliament bill is tabled. But this is a very simple solution in our opinion. To It will just prevent any kind of misuse.
Like a run on the exchange, almost. Like a run
Sorry.
on the like a difference between the run on a bank and a run on an exchange. So what happened with Robinhood was a run on the exchange, where such high amount of sell orders take place that the company itself doesn't have a liquidity that doesn't have enough liquidity to provide, for instance.
In those scenarios, of course, deposits and withdrawals can prevent that from happening, right? But then, of course, just like NSE has rules for hard clips, where if the market falls below a certain level, you stop trading, etc. All those can be put in place to avoid such situations.
But do you think so? I think the fundamental concern for the government is that if I were to boil it down to one sentence, is that because this is a global market, it's a 24/7 hour market. We can't make rules about it. So you can make a rule on CoinDCX, but Bitcoin ka price will move depending on the global changes. So is there models to be looked at where, or what are your thoughts on government trying to create sovereign control over Bitcoin or trading activity on cryptocurrencies? Does that you think that hurts the industry more, or that creates frictions that are unnecessary frictions?
That's a good question. I mean, government should not be controlling the price, right? But it should control the deviations. For example, uh, if the if the prices in India specifically fall too low or too high compared to the global market, that should be controlled. That should be controlled, right? You should not control the price itself, but the deviations, the lack of liquidity should be controlled. There must be certain liquidity available in the market. That rule can be enforced, right? The order book should not be thin, right? So all those things can be controlled. How large market orders can be put on the platform. So the rules can be made. We believe that rules can be made. Government does not need to control the prices, but the rules of trading can be controlled. Yes.
So, just in terms of what is CoinDCX's strategy, I know you all launched an app for to make it much more easier to trade. I know you all have an online platform, of course. I know you have a learning platform now where you're doing a lot of education and various things from beginners to people like me who are in between expert level and beginners. So, what is the strategy in terms of how do you make money? How are you planning to expand globally to newer markets? Obviously, trading will continue, but clearly you want to build on top of trading.
Right. Yeah. So in terms of product, we have so Indian market, of course, the product has to be so. See, by product, we want to build a very simple product so that anybody can invest. People who invest in gold should be able to invest in Bitcoin, right? So that is the way we want to go. Of course, it will need a lot of development efforts, a lot of education efforts, and so feature wise, of course, we also plan to build something like SIPs because the markets are very volatile. It's very important to time the market properly, right? So monthly regular investment into crypto. There are models which have proven that these kind of investment tools help people in investing, right? So all these are in plans. Then building an index, because there are multiple cryptocurrencies, people don't understand where to invest generally. Whenever if you're new to crypto, okay, should you invest in Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, or it's like what cryptocurrency you should invest? So building an index is also something we are evaluating at our end. So building an app, a beautiful app is one thing, but then these financial products and financial institute, financial, avenues for the users is very important. Is very critical to make their life simple. That is something that we believe would be very helpful to the users. And of course, yes, we have plans to go and launch a global product as well. But our first objective is to bring masses, the Indian masses, into the crypto domain.
So, when you mean financial products, you want to get into lending, but crypto-based lending. So, I'd lend against your wallet, something like that.
So lending, of course, within India, it depends on the
Sure, it'll take
regulation.
a long time for Indians to get used to
Well,
the idea.
it's very difficult to get a savings license, payments
Yeah.
bank license in India, which is good because it's for the user's interest, protection of the investors. We would ideally want that the government allow that, but of course, it might take some time in India. In the global markets, yes.
So, if you were allowed to get if CoinDCX would allow to
That
so if CoinDCX was allowed to acquire a payments bank license, that's something that I mean, just the idea that you're not averse to that idea. If you were,
why not? I mean, payments bank license is certainly going to be very, see, it will work for the favor of the industry. The industry, that means the industry is mainstream. मतलब आ गया है mainstream. If the cryptocurrency company is getting payments license, that means it's mainstream. But payments license is useful for currency, right? Per se, for the asset class, that need not be done. More importantly, we should get securities license where we can open an exchange just like NSE, right? That is more that's the need of the hour for us.
so ideally, the regulations you're saying should come from both RBI and SEBI. It should be coordinated. The RBI
It
tells the payment companies and banks how to behave with you all. SEBI will give you the license to accept money for trading purposes.
Yes, ideally because the markets, the exchange part, RBI does not like it would. SEBI is an expert of how to manage the exchange, how to build those trading rules, the margin rules, etc. Right. So that is SEBI, of course. We expect
So
SEBI to do.
just want to touch upon your learning platform. So, what is your user base, and what percentage of that user base uses your learning platform to understand all of this? So, just trying to get a sense of how many of your clients are investors and are on this learning journey for piece of the pie.
Sure. So in fact, this is a good question, but Advait, there is a catch here. People use learning platform before joining the platform.
Sure, sure.
So the typical journey that we have observed is a user first wants to learn about crypto, right? So they use DCX Learn for that. We promote DCX Learn for that, and then from there we have CTS from where they can, once they are comfortable, then they can jump onto the trading platform, buying and selling platform from there. So typically that's the journey, and a good percentage of people come onto the CoinDCX buying selling platform via the learning platform.
Sure.
Yes.
So my last question is sort of how you guys manage. I know you all have raised money from investors. Just wanted to understand. I see some crypto firms in India launching their own tokens. Some of them have launched their own coins on other exchanges. Um, I use CoinDCX recently put out a paper on Ethereum token that you're sort of thinking about. So, what does a token do for an exchange like y'all? Is it just capital raising ability, or are you building specific products on that as opposed to it just being an investment vehicle?
Sure. So Advait, exchange token, we have not released and we have not planned it fully yet, the exchange token part. Mainly because we want to be very sure of the utility of the token first, right? That is why in the market we don't have much confidence on the existing exchange tokens globally, of course. So we want to be sure about this good model so that it's useful. It has a utility, right? For fundraising, we don't go for a token because we have fundraised from other renowned investors. So never going to be our objective for the exchange token, right? Normally, we have seen people release exchange tokens for raising funds in Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? But that is not relevant for us. We want to focus on the utility part, which we have not found like very promising as of now. But yes, of course, Liquideth is completely different. Its price is backed by Ethereum, so we don't have any
Okay.
like buying and selling cannot change its price. It's more so Ethereum is taking locks Ethereum into it. It's taking the Ethereum is locked into the Ethereum blockchain. So to make that liquid again, we have released a token backed by the locked Ethereum.
Okay. Okay. So it's like a CD or it's like a securitized product almost.
It's like a bond. It's
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
bond. If you buy that, it gives you a certain yield. The
Okay.
staking yield.
Okay.
Staking
Right.
yield.
Right. Right. Okay.
Yes.
It's an
It's
investment
like
of an investment. Yeah.
yes. It's like instead of buying Ethereum, you buy staked Ethereum, so that you
Okay.
have the volatility of Ethereum, the exposure of Ethereum, plus a 10% return on top of this.
Okay.
You
Okay.
know. Yes. Yes.
And that's launched completely.
So the token is not launched. The Ethereum staking has been launched. People can lock their Ethereum, and then we'll
Sure.
provide them with token in a few days.
Okay. Sure. So just a last question: where do you think we're headed in 2021? Does Bitcoin double the price? Does it hit 100,000? Do you
I
think?
believe so. I believe so. That is because institutional participation has been growing. We have seen influx of institutions, and that is happening across the globe. That is happening, right? So retail investment, of course, it's going, but then institutions have a huge amount of money, right? And yeah,
So by my calculations, I already own 10% of the Bitcoin market.
yes, yes.
So
And but that is not it, because typically institutions have the capability and capacity to
for,
hold more than 80%,
for sure, 100%.
right?
It's
So
only a
that is just a
trillion. It's only $1 trillion. If all the institutions come together, they can buy.
yes.
So, but
That's why there is huge
where
upside.
do you think India's crypto firms like y'all are going to go? Or do you think you're going to double your user base? I think it was less. It was probably 50% pre-COVID of what it is today, which is 7.5 million as per all the industry estimates. Um, where do you think we're going in India?
So yeah, in India has a population of 1.5 billion people, right? We expect we expect 50 million people to be a part of the industry, right? And of course, as an exchange, we believe that we would be the largest Indian exchange out there, right? Having more than a 50% market share. So with that, eventually we want to have, ideally we should have a user base of more than 25 million people in India. Uh, all depends on how government frames the regulations and when the government frames the regulations, right? All depends on that. But yes, if the government frames the regulation, we believe 25 million people coming on the platform, in next 2 years. And in the long run, we expect 50 million people to come on board the platform under our Try Crypto campaign.
I'll leave you to it. Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you everyone for watching.